you could join us today. We will be covering one of the most hot and important topics in the subscription business, which of course is metrics and KPI. During this webinar, we will cover several topics. First, we will talk about why we use metrics and KPIs and how they can take your business to the next level. Second, we briefly touch upon the usual suspects. Then we will zoom in a bit on CMRR versus MRR. And many companies, of course, report and understand MRR, but CMRR is not always clear as to why it's different and important. Next up are the customer acquisition cost and lifetime value. Here we will talk about how these are related and together provide insights in your business. Another important metric, of course, often underestimated is net retention, which we also want to touch upon. After covering today's metrics, we also want to tell you about how one of our customers uses metrics to grow their business. And of course, as Emily said, we will close this webinar with enough room for questions at the end. And during the webinar, we will also be asking you questions. So please look forward to some interaction. Diving straight into the content, other than the obvious periodic reporting we all know and love, we need our metrics to tell us something so we can act. Reporting can often be perceived as something cumbersome, passive, and bureaucratic even. But when insights are used actively, you can learn key strengths and weaknesses in your business. Metrics are essentially a business mirror, which tells you how you are performing. Not only that, but they tell you about your customers' behavior, your internal processes, being profitable in sales, and more importantly, the potential of your company. It allows you to see threats on the horizon, which, if tackled early on, are no threats, but opportunities. Let's look at these examples. So example A is a contract expiration date. If known and acted upon early on, the customer can be kept warm, involved, and managed into a subscription renewal rather than churn and revenue loss. Example B shows a pretty big revenue drop in January 2022, based on the existing subscriptions we have today. This could trigger you to see what is the cause of this, such as a churn, partial churn, or contracts which simply expire in the start of a year. So what you can easily see here is what would happen if these contracts will be cancelled. With these insights, you can counter by contacting these customers, run active marketing campaigns on this specific portion of your base, or focus more on new deals in the months running up to these dates. Insights are super useful if they are used to act on the information your business gives back to you. KPIs are a bit different than metrics. KPIs are goals set for your business using methods like SMART or OKRs, objective key results. We then use our metrics to track progress versus those KPIs. Typically, we see two types of KPIs. One is more revenue driven with KPIs directly related to revenue on, for instance, MRR level, or ARPU or ARPA, average revenue per user or account. The other one is more process-driven. The process-driven ones will probably also impact the revenue, but may have less of a direct relationship. These tell more about operations like sales processes, maybe covering too many steps, or we don't measure how happy our existing base is. So no matter how many customers we bring in, they keep going out the back door. So we always recommend using KPIs in addition to metrics. At Younium, just to give you some inside information, we use OKRs per department to set goals and use, of course, our metrics to report against the success of our OKRs. I think we all know the importance of metrics and KPIs within our business. Otherwise, you would not be joining this webinar. But as you can imagine, metrics and KPIs are also very important outside your business. So SaaS and software companies have the tendency of changing owners quite regularly, and of course, require funding to keep enabling growth. So a recent McKinsey study actually claims that there is a 92% chance of failure if a software company grows less than 20% per year. Now, a startup may laugh at these percentages and don't get out of bed for 20%, but the bigger you become, the more challenging it will be to increase your growth with 20%. Therefore, if you're able to present convincing facts about your business in terms of revenue and profitability, it is much more likely to get more funds to keep investing in the growth of your business. And of course, for those who are on a mission to position the company for a sale at some point, having accurate metrics on current and future revenue can significantly impact the enterprise value, ensuring you get the maximum out of your hard work from building a business. Emily, we have a question.
Yes, we have our first poll that I will launch here for you. So how many hours per month does your team spend on subscription-related reporting? Below 4, 4 to 10, 10 to 20, or more than 20 hours? We give you some seconds to vote on this, and then we will actually discuss the topic with our CEO a bit. So let's end poll and share the result here. And welcome on stage, Niklas. So what about hours and per month and team spent on subscription related reporting?
I think it's super interesting to see that there is such a big variation of how much reporting goes into this topic every month. And especially since we have, or at least I assume most of the attendees have a very forward-oriented business with recurring revenues. And I think it's so easy to get bogged down by the day-to-day tasks of reporting and the standard reporting as we get more and more backlog. And of course, like even if you're below 4 hours or if you're 4 to 10 or wherever you are here, but of course, if we can shift and take away some of the hours of the standard reporting and really look ahead and see what are the customer segments working well, what can we do about our pricing, what product lines should we keep or adjust, that makes a big difference. So how can we go from reporting and really shift into a bit more of analysis and looking ahead? And of course, both the KPI and metrics are super important to that.
Thank you, Niklas. So let's go further. The stage is yours again, Walter.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for those who voted. Really interesting results. When talking about SaaS metrics, it is likely that the first ones you talk about are MRR, ARR, and churn. Subscription business predominantly offers recurring services, with of course the exceptions like usage-based products, setup fees, consultancy hours, etc. This means that measuring a recurring revenue tells you much more about the health of your company. ARR stands for annual recurring revenue, MRR for monthly recurring revenue. ARR is actually only a relevant metric if your subscription term has a minimum of 1 year. MRR works for subscription periods per month, as the name pretty much gives away. One of the biggest benefits of running a recurring business reported on MRR or ARR is that you not only look back and show historical data on how well we performed last year, but if I have closed a contract today for 1 year, I know I have revenue from that contract exactly 1 year from now. This means recurring revenue reporting is looking forward as much as looking back. The basic sum you can make to calculate MRR is the number of customers times the value of their subscription. The basic sum you can make for ARR is the number of customers times the monthly value of their subscription times the month left in the year. So if we look at the ARR example on the right here, you see we signed 5 contracts in January at €1,000 per month. We will have 12 months left of the year and therefore generate an ARR of 60,000. If in February, when there are only 11 months left up to December, sign another 5 contracts with the same conditions, we would add 55k ARR, bringing our total ARR to 115k. Then we have churn, which is a metric we would all love at 0 for the remainder of our careers. Often though, this is not the case. Churn tells us something about the frequency of customers leaving us and hereby reducing our recurring revenue. Churn can be divided into 2 groups, full churn and contraction. Full churn basically means the customer has canceled their subscription and is no longer generating revenue at all. And a contraction or partial churn can mean that a customer, for instance, canceled a few users or has decided not to use an add-on anymore. Churn is a very important parameter as it is directly related to your enterprise value. This is also one of the reasons why we see a shift from account management and support departments to customer success departments to keep that backdoor shut, basically. And from a chief sales officer to a chief revenue officer to also grow revenue on existing customers. When other businesses are interested in buying your company, they look at both your revenue and churn to calculate the multiplier. The multiplier ultimately calculates the value of your enterprise, directly impacting the price for purchase. So keeping that backdoor shut therefore becomes one of the most important focuses of a recurring business. Now we know about MRR, but it's also good to look at CMRR and the key differences between them. CMRR and the principle of talking about the so-called bookings is kind of new, or at least not as popular as MRR. A booking is in essence an event that initiates or changes a contract. So for example, a new customer, an expansion, contraction, or even churn. From that booking, we measure the ACV, the annual contract value, which is the value of the contract per year. And from that same booking, we measure the CMRR, contracted monthly recurring revenue. CMRR is used to measure the MRR coming from a booking, but assumes an ongoing renewal and assumes that no further changes are made to the subscription, meaning it is the contracted monthly recurring revenue at the time of the booking. MRR measures revenue per month according to subscription dates. Let's look at an example. So we mentioned MRR is bound by a monthly period from the start and end dates of the subscription charge. This means that in this example we see here, the MRR will change throughout the subscription. So in the months of March, April, and May, we have 500 euros MRR, followed by 1,000 euros MRR after that period. Now here comes that crucial difference with CMRR. A CMRR is not bound by this period and will begin the month we contractually sign this customer. CMRR looks at what the monthly price will be recurring forever, up to the point of a next booking. In the example above, we have 3 months of 500 euros, which have a specific end date. And the CMRR doesn't really look at this. It is not permanently recurring. But the 1,000 euros will be recurring forever until another booking or contract event happens that affects the CMRR again. So in this example, we would report an added CMRR of 1,000 euros as per the 16th of February. Here you can also see a screenshot of how bookings and CMRR are shown in the dashboard of, in this case, Younium. You can see contract events happen which add and reduce revenue according to the bookings made in the system. Oh, one more thing. This is a topic we can spend a long time talking about. So I would like to quickly mention that we have a more detailed blog on this specific topic on our website. So go check it out after the webinar. Emily.
Yes, it's time for some fun again. So, are you currently using bookings or CMRR as metrics? Of course, no, but we'll start looking into it after this webinar. I don't see the relevance. I still need to understand this better before I make my decision. So it's time for some voting, and then we will have a discussion. So, Niklas, what do you say about bookings, CMRR, or other related things to this results or the topic?
Well, seeing the results as well, there are quite some of you who don't use it, but will look into it, and I can highly recommend that. Looking at our own business, I think it's really provides you with good insights. As Walter mentioned, I mean, one thing could be, you know, the paramount KPI that we're all targeting, but to really understand our business, I think a few different metrics can really help us, such as if we look at contracted MRR, it really gives you an insight to business performance. It could be the deals that we signed this month and perhaps, you know, the cancellations we received, but that are not in effect, but until in 6 months. So we wouldn't see that if we were only tracking the pure MRR, ARR, because we would still have revenue coming in from the churn deals, but we would not get the revenue from the new deals. So the CMRR or ACV really provides you with an insight to the future. So for instance, talking to like investors who are in here for the long game and they want to see what will happen in the future, CMRR ACV really provides a good measure. But of course, if you want to see, okay, so what will our revenue be next month, then ARR and MRR would be a better metric. And combining these usually provides quite some insights into the deals. And perhaps just a disclaimer, the only, I would say, exclusion from this is if you're running a high velocity, you know, fully standardized, every deal looks the same, very quick onboarding. But I would just think that quite a few of you do have some of the negotiated deals, some variations. So I would strongly advise you to at least look into this and see, you know, what could it provide you with in terms of insights.
Yeah, and maybe that could also be a topic for a next webinar to dig in deeper to those detailed things. So back to you, Walter.
Yes, very cool feedback. Now, we talked about all that lovely money coming in, but we also spent money on bringing our customers in. The customer acquisition cost is, in our opinion, also a crucial metric to measure, as it is calculating the cost necessary to get new customers through the door. The customer acquisition cost includes both a cost of both sales and marketing required to bring a customer in. It is expressed by showing the average cost we spend per customer. So if you look at the formula here, and let's say we spend 10,000 euros on sales and marketing, which resulted into us winning 1,000 customers, our customer acquisition cost would be 10 euros, 10,000 divided by 1,000. Depending on the business you are in, the cost should of course have a maximum, which is by many companies actually set as a KPI. If you're running a value business, meaning a higher revenue per account, your customer acquisition cost is allowed to be on the higher side. If you're running a volume business and wish to bring in many customers with lower ARPA, which is the average revenue per account, the customer acquisition cost should be very low and is more likely to be reviewed more often. The cost taken aboard the sales and marketing cost can differ per company. So a couple of common ones we see are the ads, the salary of marketing and sales staff, creative marketing, which is for instance cost of creating videos and brochures, technology, meaning CRM tools or marketing platforms, and of course sales expenses such as taking your customers out to lunch, which I guess is a bit less common the past 14 months. A great way to reduce your customer acquisition cost is closely look at the customer your journey takes from the first point of contact until becoming a customer. So for example, a customer hears about you for the first time in a webinar, then engagement begins, meetings are held, price discussion, contract negotiations, etc., until of course the contract is signed. The shorter this customer journey, the better your customer acquisition cost in most scenarios. Now that we know how much it costs to bring in new customers, it's also good to look at the average amount a customer brings in terms of revenue over time. The lifetime value, also sometimes called customer lifetime value, helps us with this. The lifetime value is in essence a prediction of the value the customer will bring to your business during their stay with you. And depending on the business you're in, this is calculated in different ways. But for the subscription business, we advise a best practice to calculate the average revenue per account and the churn within a certain period. The average revenue per account is the total CMRR over a time period divided by the number of customers from that same period. Then you calculate the churn rate over that same period, which is the lost customers divided by the total customers, as we talked about before. And then with these two figures, we can calculate the lifetime value, which is the ARPA divided by the churn rate in a specific time period. The figure coming out of this formula is the customer lifetime value. Let's look at an example. Here we also see why that CMRR we talked about is so important, because in this example on the left, we can see the average CMRR in May is 2,171 euros. On the right, we see the churn rate for that month. In this case, for May, we see a loss of 2 customers divided over the total base we had of 63 customers, which gives us a churn rate of 3.1%. Dividing the CMRR with the churn rate gives us a lifetime value of roughly 70K. That amount is the average revenue a customer brings in during their stay with us. Of course, May have been the best month ever with only 2 customers lost, so doing this over a larger period of time can be more meaningful. We mentioned earlier that when using metrics, you can also calculate profitability. This can be done using the LTV to CAC ratio. Typically, if your LTV is higher than 3 times the value of your customer acquisition cost, you are profitable. That's kind of like the rule of thumb there. So let's use the LTV from our previous example, which was 70K in May. We also know our customer acquisition cost for that month, it's 16K. So if we take the LTV and subtract the value of 3 times the customer acquisition cost, we have calculated the LTV to CAC ratio, and we see we have a 20K profitability per customer. Many subscription businesses focus on this ratio. We often recommend to also set a KPI to increase the LTV to CAC ratio. This ratio can be increased through initiatives such as decreasing the customer acquisition cost by looking at that customer journey as we talked about, focus on reduced churn by establishing proper customer success organizations and run NPS, Net Promoter Score programs, or by increasing the ARPA by looking more closely at the customers you wish to bring in, the ideal customer profile and the revenue their size or cohort represents to your business. The last metric for today's webinar is the net retention rate. The net retention rate is visualized in a percentage, which tells you something about growth. The annual contract value is an important indicator of what your net retention should be. If you're in the volume business, selling to SMBs, a good net retention is 90%. And if you're in the value market, selling to enterprises, a good net retention is around 125%. Most commonly, though, we strive for a net retention of 100% plus, which is also the average net retention percentage across all SaaS businesses. The net retention rate is in essence is the percentage of recurring revenue retained from customers in a defined period of time. This includes all sorts of bookings like upsell, downsell, cancellations, and so on. Net retention can also be reported on all sorts of KPIs like per ACV, per customer cohort, region, and so on. Let's again look at a more concrete example. So if we look at January 2020 here, we have contracted 1 new customer called Digital Partner. This created a booking of 11K CMRR. On the column headers then, you can see a counter starting from 0 up to 18. 0 is the contracted month in this case. So January and 1, for example, is the first month after that, meaning February. And if we then look all the way to the right at period 12, we see the percentage decreasing in the orange box. This is exactly 1 year after we signed this customer. The percentage indicates a drop of 33% of the contracted revenue, bringing the net retention to 67%. If we look at the detail in the gray box here, it is because we see a partial cancellation of 3.8K in January 2021, which is the reason our net retention decreased. Then in February, another contraction happens, bringing the net retention to 38%. A more positive scenario can be seen in the row of December 2019. Here we see the 2 customers we signed actually caused upsells. This is shown by the percentage increase from 0 from 100 to 129%. A net retention greater than 100% means you have more coming in than going out, which is of course what we all want. Oh, and one more secret, if you show these kind of graphs to an investor or prospective buyer, it can do cool things for you. That was the last metric for today. I hope the webinar gave you some new information and inspires you to take measuring success to the next level. Before jumping into the Q&A, we would like to look at a customer example together. One of our customers, formpipe, is a company in the enterprise content management category. They're a public company with operations in 10 legal entities. They serve both public and private sector, and they have been around for quite some time, meaning that they have both new business as well as legacy business to manage. Before Younium, they kept the enormous spreadsheets to track and control their bookings. Of course, new business, but also changes on existing contracts caused the spreadsheets to explode. In addition, they saw increasing requirements on providing subscriptions, KPIs, to their management. They now have fully eliminated these spreadsheets, but use Younium's data model for their reporting. This has led to less manual work, fast reporting, and the ability to perform a more detailed analysis on the business, as well as reduced risk for manual errors. With this story, we have come to the end of this webinar, and I'll gladly hand back over to you, Emily.
Thank you, Walter, and thank you for this. Yes, of course, we want to also encourage you to jump into our LinkedIn page and follow us there, and also read our blog, of course, and our website, younium.com. And now we have saved a few minutes, around 5 minutes left for question and answers. So please write in the chat if you have something in mind, and we have our experts here to answer. We will also send out the webinar, as I said, maybe not before weekend, but in a week at least, we will give it to you by email. So let's see here in the chat. Yes, we have regarding CAC, is it any difference in reporting if you have long sales cycles? Let's say 9 months average from first contact to close deal and the cost per current month. Our expert panel.
Yes, sorry. Yeah. I definitely think that depending on the nature of your business, it makes sense to have like slightly different definitions of I would say all metrics. Especially, I mean, if we were high volume, like we make 1,000 deals every month, perhaps it doesn't matter if we have 9-month sales cycles or 3 months, but it's really consistent month over month. But at the same time, I do think that is not the normal case. And I think if you have longer sales cycles, you have perhaps variation over the year when deals are made, etc. I definitely think it's wise to sort of average the number over a number of months. But perhaps most important is to be consistent over time, because perhaps it's not the number itself all the time, but really the trend and what happens. Does it go up? Does it go down? And why does that happen? So be really consistent and know what you're measuring.
Thank you, Niklas. And now we have a question directly to Walter. Are there any restrictions to which type of business can join Younium?
That's a very good question. I like it. Yes and no. We are experts in kind of the B2B area, and we are experts in kind of the more complicated subscriptions, I would say. So typically what we do is we first meet our customers, and then we have what we call a 15-minute discovery call. And that's where we have a little map, which we draw for our customers, where you see kind of like the easy subscriptions and the more complicated subscriptions, first the B2B and the B2C. And then we ask you, their customer, where are you on this map? And then we will honestly tell you that, yes, we can help you, or no, but this is a great solution for you. So in theory, yes, many types of businesses absolutely can join us. We have more than just SaaS companies in our customer base, but we have that discovery call to find out if we have a match.
Yeah, and please, if you wish to have a discovery call with Walter, just tell that in the chat and he will contact you directly. We have another question here also. We use Salesforce. Do you have any integration or connector, or how does it work if we want to run Salesforce together with Younium?
We do have a ready-to-go connector, a package that can be installed in Salesforce that communicates with Younium, which cover most cases regarding transfer of insights, but also how to streamline the quote to cash process even further. So yes.
Yeah, and if you go to our website, we also have a connector page there where you can find also our ready-to-go connectors, but we also have an open API, of course. Do we have any more questions here coming in? No, okay, but then we are ready for today. Thank you so much for joining us, and please let us know if you have any further questions for me, Niklas, or for Walter or anyone else, and we will of course contact you. We will send out a recording of the webinar within a week. And then, of course, we hope that you will join us later on in new webinars. So, thank you for today.
Yes, thank you for your time.
Thank you.